The day started the way so many others did at the station, fluorescent panels flickering to life overhead, everyone arriving grim-faced and silent. I sipped weak coffee, the burnt taste barely registering on my tongue. My desk was a clutter of deadline reminders, draft scripts, and the lingering smell of old microwave meals. I kept my headphones on even when there was nothing playing, just to protect myself from all the noise that wasn't sound. It was just after noon when Mr. Han called me into his office. He didn't like me, I'd known it since my very first week, the way his eyes skipped right over me in meetings unless he had a criticism. Even today, his handshake was a theatrical display of indifference. I felt the stares on me as I crossed the open floor, a small parade of defeated steps. Some of the more junior staff glanced quickly away, but I caught the smirks from the older editors. Through the glass walls of his office, sunlight fell slanting and sharp, highlighting every fingerprint and smudge. He motioned for me to sit, gestured toward a screen that displayed my latest scouting piece for the Saturday night current affairs program. The room was arranged to keep people out, plants lined the corners, a desk that was much too broad. From his throne of ergonomic mesh he sighed. "Seong-ho," he began, then let the silence linger long enough that I almost shifted in my chair. "I've watched your video 3 times, can you tell me what it's about?" The question was a knife. It's about the lives of migrant delivery drivers, their struggles, the hidden side of. He put up a hand, cutting through my words. Struggles. Hidden sides, this is not what viewers want to see on Saturday night. Another pause just long enough to prick my confidence. We need energy, we need appeal, not lectures about suffering. Around me the city pulsed with life, endless, unsleeping. I thought of the hours I'd spent in tiny kitchens listening to Uzbek men talk about back pain and family far away, how their faces had lit up for just a second on camera. How could he not see it? I thought if we showed their lives, maybe. You thought, he leaned back, the chair squealing a little. Listen, people want to escape, not to see reminders of how bad things are. You want to make dreary documentaries, maybe try YouTube, not SBS. Down below, office laughter bubbled up, floating through the glass. He smiled, almost playfully. You can try again. Otherwise, you'll need to think about what you're really suited for. Dismissed, I walked out, eyes fixed on the floor's scuffed tiles, each step echoing with every rejection I'd known. By my desk, a couple of the assistant producers snickered. One of them did a mocking impression of the suffering of souls unseen. Their tiny audience laughed, and for a moment I hated them all and wished only to disappear. I left the office before dark that day, walking instead of catching the subway, feeling the city breathe and close in around me. Hot, thick air pressed in from alleyways overflowing with the smells of garlic and oil. Someone jostled past with a stack of steaming boxes balanced on one shoulder, Deliveroo flashing bright on his jacket, reminding me of my failed project. I wondered how I'd ever thought any of it would matter. By the time I reached home, rain was plinking against the window. My mother phoned, as she did every night. "How was work? Are you eating enough?" Same questions always. "It's fine." "I'm tired," I said. She sniffed, then her voice edged with worry. "You work for that big company but you don't get promoted. Is it because of those ideas? You know you're not a child anymore." My throat tightened as she talked about my cousin Jeon, who had already bought a flat with her own money, who posted pictures from Singapore, smiling in crisp businesswear. She always gently reminded me of practical paths and having a plan. I listened, saying nothing. When she hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, listening to the rain turn heavier until it sounded like static or maybe applause on the rooftop above. The days blurred after that. I resubmitted duller, formulaic stories, watching my own footage smothered by corporate gloss. I went to team dinners where my colleagues eyed me like an alien and made jokes about my artisan sad films. At the annual family lunch, Uncle Min laughed so loud the glass shook. "So how's our little artist? Filmed anything real yet?" Everyone smirked into their soup. Always behind their laughter I felt the same message: this isn't real work, this is a hobby, a phase. The humiliation built up so gradually I hardly noticed myself changing. I stopped sharing any of my pitches. I spoke less in meetings, sat at the edge of gatherings. My dreams narrowed. At night I scrolled aimlessly through online forums of real filmmakers, people shooting in war zones, speaking at festivals in Europe. Sometimes I'd open my old notes, full of ideas about documenting the hidden corners of Seoul, only to close them with a painful sense of waste. One night I watched an old interview with Lee Chang-dong, the director. He said, "What we do is look hard at the world even when nobody wants us to look, that's all." Something bright flickered inside me, an echo from when I was a student and believed anything could be changed by showing it. I didn't quit right away. Fear and habit kept me clinging to my safe discomfort. It was my body that forced the decision, a panic attack in the station hallway, sudden and brutal, leaving me gasping in the shadow of the glass tower as people stepped over me, annoyed or embarrassed. Later, in the quiet of my apartment, my chest unwinding at last, I wrote my resignation email with a strange sense of clarity I'd thought was lost. There was a numb space after leaving. Days without schedules or suit jackets, the shriek of morning alarms replaced by a slow, careful waking. My mother was dismayed. She called more often, suggested accountancy courses, even arranged a meeting with a friend who worked in HR. My uncle joked, "At least you'll have free time now, right?" I watched my savings trickle away, wondered each night if I'd made a mistake I wouldn't come back from, but I had time. Time to sit in cafes, scribbling outlines on napkins. Time to meet with delivery drivers in person again, to ask their real opinions, not just interview them for a segment. I brought my old Olympus camera out from its case, carefully fixing the lens so it could film again. I started recording small stories: migrants eating dinner in rooftop apartments, Ajamas running night food stalls, kids skateboarding in empty lots. No audience but myself. It wasn't enough. I needed to make something that mattered, not just fragments. It was 2019. Rent was rising. I barely scraped by on part-time editing gigs. But every week I filmed, learning Seoul's textures in a way I never had before. The pink neon gloss by Cherished, the almost silence of empty alleyways in the north, shafts of sunrise beneath the Han River bridges. Workers smoked quietly in midnight heat, chipped paint, forgotten fruit stalls, stories behind every cracked window. The project grew by accident, letter by letter, frame by frame. I began to see a thread: the lives of people whom Seoul used and ignored, stitched across spaces most never looked. I borrowed equipment from old classmates, learned how to work light and sound alone. When money ran lowest, I took wedding videos for customers who laughed at my real ambitions. Each rejection strung, but a new stubbornness formed with every low. I named it Out of Sight. I edited every fragment until dawn, hands cramping at the keys, eyes red from hours of watching the same frame for something true. I sent it to festivals expecting nothing. Then, without warning and acceptance, Busan International Film Festival. My film was in the vision section. I walked for hours that night through rain-slicked Itaewon streets, blending among strangers. My heart kept toggling between disbelief and terror. What if they all hated it? At the premiere, I sat at the far back, hands jammed between my knees, sweating as the lights dimmed. When the film ended, there was a pause, breathless silence, then applause, not polite but sustained. A scattering of questions afterward, real questions. A few days later, I was approached by a European distributor. The film screened in Tokyo, then at a small festival in Switzerland. There was press, interviews, profiles, an article in a local Seoul magazine about the city's new observer. My savings account finally began to grow. Messages started to arrive from strangers, students who wanted to try documentaries, a professor who invited me to teach a seminar, even some of the old delivery drivers who had watched their own stories on screen with pride. One night I opened my phone to a text from my mother: "I saw you in the magazine, come home for dinner, your father and I are proud." It would have been easy to stay away. The city was bright, safer now, with work beginning to come in from producers who wanted my eye for hard truths. But something pulled me back: unfinished business, or maybe just the need to stand where I'd once been broken, to look the past in the face. The family gathering that year was at a restaurant in Jamsil, all glass walls and polite lighting. The air outside was crisp, inside heat shimmered over platters of bulgogi and jjigae. My uncle was there, predictably early, pouring soju into shot glasses with a lopsided grin. My cousin Jeon had flown in, designer bag draped over one shoulder, and her mother greeted me with a soft, amused smile. My father patted my back, pride hidden deep but unmistakable in the extra tightness of the hug. My mother clucked over my appearance: "You look tired but happy, I think." I was surrounded by the warmth of voices that once seemed only to criticize. But still, the jokes came. Uncle Min, already red-faced, raised his glass. "So our filmmaker made any money yet, or are you living off ramen deliveries?" The table laughed, even Jeon biting back a smile. I steadied my breath. "Actually, I have something I want to show you all." I'd brought a copy of the film on a USB, desperate for someone to see it not as a story but as my blood and bone. The restaurant manager, a friend of my father's, helped dim the lights. One of the chefs wheeled in a screen as if sensing the moment's importance. As the first frame flickered, the room hushed. On screen. Nighttime Seoul, city lights glowing like embers, voices, sometimes laughing, sometimes tired, rose and fell. The camera lingered on wrinkled hands counting coins, on kids racing through market stalls, on the long, quiet face of an Uzbek driver as he crossed a bridge at sunrise. I watched their faces more than the film. At first, amusement, my aunt's skeptical raise of her eyebrows, my uncle smirking, cousins giggling, but as the stories unfolded, the laughter faded. My mother blinked rapidly, her hand pressed to her chest. Jiyeon leaned forward, lost in the images. Even my uncle, who always made light of everything, sat with his mouth set in a hard line, head bowed slightly. The final scene, a grandmother sweeping discarded food into a paper sack, then feeding stray cats in an alley, whispering comfort, brought silence so deep the hum of the refrigerator was suddenly loud. The credits rolled black on white with my name alone at the center. No applause, just silence for a long moment, heavy and sincere. Then my father whispered, "That was Seoul. Our city." There was awe in his voice, something that cut through the years of gentle mockery. Jiyeon turned to me, her eyes shining. "That was beautiful, Oppa. I didn't know it could look like that." My uncle's gaze met mine, not with hostility but with something softer, almost shame-faced. "It was good," he said, "no more than good. You did this." "I did," I answered. "It was the only truth that mattered." My mother hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. "I never saw it that way. I'm sorry I doubted you." We finished dinner in new quiet, no more jokes. My relatives lifted their glasses to me, to my work, even if they didn't fully understand. Afterwards, as we lingered in the lobby, my uncle clapped my shoulder. "You know, your father brags about you at the golf course now. If you win an award next time, make sure we get an invitation." A strange sunlight filled me as I walked home, the cold night somehow less biting. I passed neon-lit streets, heard music leaking from upstairs bars, watched as a delivery bike slid past, vapor trailing in the air. This was the same city that had once closed its doors to my dreams, but it looked different now. Softer, full of hidden kindness. A few days later, I visited my old workplace, the station that had tried to break me. I was invited as a guest, not an employee, to speak about the importance of truth in documentaries. The guard at reception recognized me and smiled shyly. In the elevators, I met my old boss, Mr. Han. His expression was unreadable, polite but distant as we shook hands. After my talk in the studio, I left copies of my film for the editors. I walked by my old desk, noticing new faces, young, tired, dreaming perhaps. Outside, the afternoon air was thick with promise, not disappointment. I found myself smiling, not out of vindication but relief. I will not pretend the pain was erased by success. Some wounds never fully close, but each time I see another small story in Seoul's crowded streets, another overlooked face, I remember why I started. The grief drove me, but clarity sustained me. There's peace too in returning, not for applause, but to show that the so-called ridiculous dream was never just for me, but for everyone who needs to see what's possible after rejection. Seoul is still there, breathing, watching. I try to film it as honestly as I can.